Hey, everybody, I'm Josh Duplashane. I'm the senior producer at Trout Unlimited. And for this month's or this quarter's behind the cover image, I have with me today Ben Herndon. He is based in the Northwest and he photographed this quarter's Trout Magazine cover, which happens to be the Snake River issue. We are concentrating and fully focusing on all the issues around the Lower Snake dams, and with that, we've looked at some historical context. We've got some amazing photos. We've got a piece, original artwork by Garrison Doctor of Rep Your Water, of a really cool map. Stay tuned for that because we're going to also be raffling that off or giving that away or making prints at some point in time. So it'll be a lot of fun to check out. But in the meantime, I'd like to talk a little bit to Ben here and tell me a little bit about your background, Ben, where you're based and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, well, I'm based in northern Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. It's kind of a farming community, hippie town, and I kind of generally do kind of adventure recreation photos. But growing up in this area, I, have a lot of things that I care about in this area, and specifically like the places and the land. And so it's been, just kind of over the years watching from a distance the Snake River issues. Kind of grew up in a conservative family. So I was always, hearing it from the farmer's side and those issues. But as I got older, I've just kind of started to learn more about it. And so now, yeah, I'm just trying to do a little more for advocating for the river, and it's come down to just the fact that it's either take them down or the fish will go away. So I've just been trying to do a little more towards that direction, kind of seeing both sides. But it's, to me anymore, it's not really an issue of a side. It's just like what we got to do.
Let's dig into it a little bit. So that cover, which I will put up here, obviously it'll be in the post. I'm curious about how that transpired. We had several options, and I remember looking over this, and my supervisor, Kirk Dieter, he may or may not be familiar with, but
Yeah.
he sends off a few versions of the cover to me, and he doesn't tell me what he's thinking, and a few others don't tell me what they're thinking, and we all just kind of congregate back with our respective answers on what we think it should be, and we all without a doubt picked this. And Kirk will make a point as well, and I think this is valid too, is we never run words on the cover of Trout Magazine. If you go back and you look back at all the issues, it's a photograph and it's the Trout cover, Trout Magazine logo at the top. So this will also be a first time in a very, very long time that there's been actual words on the front of the page, spelling out the point here. But I'm curious about how this came together. I think others would be curious as well, and what the meaning behind this was.
Yeah. So I was reached out to by Julian Matthews. He's part of the Nimiipuu or Nez Perce tribe. He runs, with a few others, runs Nimiipuu Protecting the Environment. It's a nonprofit. They are really involved with a lot of like river advocacy and just tribal advocacy for the land. And he reached out. It was kind of last minute, if I remember right. But he had told me that Bill Moyer is from the Backbone Foundation, and they run, they kind of do the projection stuff through different kind of social advocacy and different issues, environmental advocacy. So yeah, they had come out. He was trying out it was the longest projection I think that they had ever tried. It was like a few hundred yards, I think, from the shore to the dam. So he was kind of not even sure that it would work. But as it got darker, it ended up working out just fine. So, and it showed up, of course, it shows up really well on the camera. But you could definitely see them out there. So we had a small group of some tribal members, with, talking about honoring the treaties, and just kind of out to watch it. And so, yeah, it was pretty neat. We were there probably for a couple hours, and it was kind of up in the air until it got dark. And then they rotated through a few different slides. And yeah, ended up being, as I was taking photos up on the hill, I was like, this is working. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the general, tone at that moment when you're seeing that with people? I mean, it's a pretty powerful statement, and it's projected onto a physical object. One can only assume that, that has a lot of meaning, and that really kind of sinks in when you see it there and doing that.
It did. I think I remember one of the tribal members was, kind of almost tearing up a little bit because it was pretty powerful. The dams themselves are, that was at Lower Granite, and they are, if you've ever gone through the locks in one of those dams, it's a pretty, they are an amazing structure. They're huge. So to see, I think, the projection out there, and then the water coming out, you could hear it coming out the other side. It was, yeah, definitely pretty. It was like a very grand stage, I guess, about the biggest stage that you can do as far as man-made structures. So
Right.
it was pretty cool.
I mean, I don't know your opinion, but it sounds like, to me, like these bold statements that people are making about this particular issue regarding these lower four dams and the survival of a species is kind of necessary in this day and age, and
yeah, I did
count on.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself like I have strong views about protecting the environment. I wouldn't consider myself an activist necessarily, but the tone now, it just seems like it's, you have to talk a little louder and be a little showier because it's becoming bleaker, pretty quick. So the time for just kind of, it's still good to have those calm conversations if you can, one-on-one with people, because that can help. But the time for broader kind of awareness is definitely at hand. We just kind of need to get this thing rolling, because yeah, the clock's ticking for sure. So
right. I mean, you've been around, that general area for all of your life in one way, shape, or form, and worked there and lived there and played there. What is, can you imagine in your own head, especially as a visual person, we think visually, imagine what these places will be like, if these dams come out, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think that's something that doing photos in some of these places where, the West, it's changing pretty quickly, but it also has these areas that are relatively, as they were for thousands of years. If there's no roads or, too many invasive plant species, there's some areas that are still. So I do think about, it would be cool just to turn the clock back a little bit where we can, and especially for the tribes, like they've been screwed over so many times on things that it's just something that makes sense all around. And so, yeah, I think it would be really cool to see a free flowing river in there. And I think it would be a boon for recreation. I have no doubt that would be a huge free flowing section of river, all the way from the Hell's Canyon Dam, way up the Snake, all the way down. That would be pretty cool. So I think, yeah, some of the motorized boaters would be probably upset. But I think there's other groups that would also be, really psyched to, have that river be returned home. And there's supposed to be quite a few rapids, I guess, in there. So yeah, I hope it happens.
Well, I'm excited to see the magazine hit people's mailboxes shortly. If you haven't gotten it by now, I'm sure you will soon. And I just want to thank you, Ben, for your time and your efforts in documenting, something so important for a lot of us, and appreciate the time and effort that it takes to do so.
Yeah, well, thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Cool.